With a tyre forced around his neck, sweat and tears dripping down his face, Emeka screamed with everything in him, "I'm not a cultist. I'm not a cultist." But the angry crowd refused to listen. His last cry for innocence was swallowed by fire, and a destiny full of promise was cut short forever. This is not just a story, it is a warning that every youth, every parent, must hear. Hi guys, welcome to this channel, where powerful African stories, true life lessons, and emotional folktales come alive. If you're new here, don't leave without subscribing. We share stories that inspire, warn, and touch the heart. Join this growing family, turn on the notification bell, and never miss a story that could change a life. The morning sun was already hot over the red earth streets of Umeus, and the sound of pounding pestle and distant motorbikes filled the air. Emeka bent under the weight of a sack of cement balanced on his back, his shirt soaked in sweat, his thin frame trembling but determined. At just 19, he had become the pride and hope of his widowed mother, the boy everyone said was destined for greatness. But destiny, Emeka knew, was not fed by words alone. It was fed by sweat, by sacrifice, by the endless grinding of days like this one. "Easy, my son," the shop owner called as Emeka dropped the cement onto a pile. Dust rose into the air, choking his lungs. Emeka forced a smile, wiped his forehead with the back of his hand, and nodded. He had carried loads for masons, washed dishes in small restaurants, even helped dig gutters in the rain. Every naira he earned, he folded neatly into a small box hidden under his bed mat. His goal was clear, to save enough money for his university admission and his first semester fees. He had passed his exams with brilliant scores, and the university letter of acceptance had arrived weeks ago, creased at the edges from how many times he had read it. He had danced with it in his hands, his mother singing songs of joy in their little compound. But joy alone could not pay school fees. At night, when the street grew quiet and only the chorus of crickets remained, Emeka would sit on the clay floor of their small room with a candle stub, reading his old textbooks. His mother, Mama Nkechi, often watched him from the doorway, her heart swelling with pride and fear at the same time. She remembered her husband's dying words, "Take care of the boy. He is the light we have left." She prayed every night that the world would not steal that light away. One evening, Emeka returned home with blisters on his palms from a day of carrying sand at a construction site. His mother took his hands in hers and gasped, "My son, this suffering is too much. You are working like a man with 10 children to feed." Emeka smiled, his tired eyes bright with quiet fire. "Mama, it will not be forever. When I graduate, you will never touch a hoe again. I will build you a shop. I will make you proud." His mother's eyes filled with tears. She whispered a blessing in Igbo, pressing her palm gently on his forehead. Weeks passed, and Emeka's envelope of savings grew fatter, though never fast enough for his liking. He worked in the morning, studied at night, and prayed in between. He resisted the temptation of quick money, resisted the whispers of shortcuts. When some boys in the village mocked him, saying he looked like a slave boy carrying loads, Emeka ignored them. Deep inside, he knew what he was chasing, not their approval, but a future. The day finally came when he counted the money and realized it was enough for his admission, his acceptance fees, and even his first few months in school. He could not stop smiling as he told his mother, and she wept with relief, thanking God aloud. Together, they packed his clothes into a small Gonomos go bag. His mother tucked in some foodstuffs, gari, dried fish, groundnut. She placed a small Bible at the very top and told him, "Never let this book leave your side. Remember where you come from." The morning of his departure, neighbors gathered to see him off. Some clapped him on the back, some offered advice, and some only watched silently, their eyes carrying both envy and admiration. His mother prayed over him one last time at the bus park, her voice trembling as she said, "Emeka, you are my only son. Do not let the city swallow you. Remember the path we walk is narrow, but it leads to life." The bus engine roared, and as it pulled away, Emeka waved, his heart heavy but full of hope. For the first time, he was leaving the dusty streets of Umeus behind, chasing the promise of books, classrooms, and a future brighter than his humble beginnings. The journey to campus was long, filled with laughter and chatter of other students. Some were from wealthy families, carrying shiny boxes and gadgets, while others were like him, clutching small bags with all they had in the world. He listened, quietly observing. Already, he could see the differences, the bold ones, the shy ones, the loud ones, and those who seemed to carry secrets in their eyes. When he stepped onto the university grounds, he felt something shift inside him. The tall buildings, the crowd of students, the smell of fried food mixed with dust, it was a new world, a new beginning. His heart raced with excitement. He whispered a prayer under his breath, God, let me not disappoint Mama. Let me not disappoint myself. That night, in his new hostel room shared with 3 other boys, Emeka lay on a stained mattress and stared at the ceiling. He thought of his mother's face, of her calloused hands waving him goodbye, of the sacrifices that had brought him here. He made a silent vow, no matter what it took, he would succeed. But outside the hostel walls, laughter and music drifted in the air. The sound of students calling each other, the echo of footsteps running down corridors, the thump of loud music from a nearby room. Somewhere in that noise, Emeka heard the voice of temptation calling, though he did not yet know it. For now, he was still the dreamer. Still the boy who had carried cement and washed plates to reach this place. Still the son who whispered to himself, Mama must never regret this. And so his story began, full of hope, full of promise, but shadowed by choices yet to come. The days after Emeka's arrival at the university felt like stepping into a dream. He moved from lecture hall to library, from library to the hostel, clutching his notebooks like treasures. The professors' voices thundered with authority, and every new lesson opened a door in his mind. For the first time in his life, he felt the taste of freedom, no village gossips watching him, no heavy loads on his back, just knowledge and possibility. Yet freedom was not without its shadows. Around him, Emeka saw students living lives that looked bigger than the world he knew. Boys with gold chains, flashy sneakers, and loud laughter walked through campus as if they owned it. Girls with perfect braids and expensive perfumes floated by, their eyes set only on those who could match their lifestyle. Emeka, with his simple clothes and quiet manner, blended into the background. He told himself he didn't mind. He had come here to study, not to show off. But temptation has a way of walking slowly, circling closer each day. It began with small encounters. In his first week, one of his roommates, a tall boy named Jude, slapped him on the back after lectures and said, "Guy, you dey try oh. Always burying your head inside book. But university no be only for book, you gat enjoy life small." Emeka smiled politely, not wanting to argue. Jude was friendly, the kind of boy who always knew where the fun was happening. He introduced Emeka to his circle of friends, boys who dressed sharp, spoke loud, and never seemed to lack money. They ordered food carelessly at the cafeteria, tossed cash on the counter, and laughed at anyone who hesitated to pay. At first, Emeka only sat quietly at the edge of their table, listening more than speaking. They made jokes he didn't understand, spoke of parties that lasted until dawn, and hinted at powerful brothers who watched their backs on campus. When Emeka asked what that meant, they exchanged knowing smiles and changed the topic. One Friday night, Jude leaned close to him and whispered, "There's a party tonight. Off campus. You go enjoy. Don't always stay in this your corner like a priest." Emeka hesitated. His mother's warnings rang in his head, but curiosity tugged at him. He had never been to such a gathering before. Against his better judgment, he followed. The party was unlike anything he had seen. Music pounded through the walls of a dimly lit house, bodies swayed in wild rhythm, bottles clinked, and smoke hung heavy in the air. Emeka stood awkwardly by the door at first, but Jude pressed a drink into his hand, laughing. "Relax, my guy. This is the real university life." For the first time in months, Emeka tasted alcohol. It burned his throat, made his head light, but when he saw the carefree laughter around him, something inside whispered that maybe he belonged here too. That night he returned to the hostel with unsteady steps, promising himself it was only once. But once is all it takes to open a door. Over the weeks, he found himself pulled deeper into their world. He still studied hard, but the balance began to shift. The group of friends grew bolder, bringing him along to gatherings where whispers of cult groups lingered in the air. They never called themselves cultists, they used words like family, brotherhood, protection. Emeka listened, uneasy, but said nothing. One evening, as they lounged outside the hostel, a boy named Chike boasted about how nobody could touch him on campus. "If anyone messes with me, my people will handle it." That's the power of belonging. He flashed a grin at Emeka. "You dey always follow us, but you never join fully. How long you one day sit for fence?" The others laughed, clapping Emeka on the back. His throat tightened, but he forced a smile. "I came here for books, not trouble." They laughed even louder, shaking their heads. To them, he was still the innocent villager, the boy with Gary in his bag and fear in his eyes. Yet their laughter did not chase him away. Slowly, he grew used to it, even comfortable with their noise and boldness. And in the eyes of outsiders, his closeness to them painted a dangerous picture. Rumors began to spread. Students whispered that Emeka was moving with the wrong crowd. Some girls warned each other not to get too close to him. His lecturers noticed his distraction, the way his eyes sometimes carried shadows of sleepless nights. But Emeka still told himself he was in control. He thought he could walk with them and still keep his own path. He believed friendship was harmless, that he could take what he wanted, the fun, the laughter, the protection, without paying the price of full commitment. Then came the night that changed everything. It was during mid-semester, the air on campus heavy with tension. Rival groups had clashed earlier in the week, and rumors of revenge filled the air. Emeka's mother called him that evening, her voice troubled. "My son, I had a dream. Stay away from bad company. Remember who you are." He reassured her, hiding the truth of his late nights and questionable friends. He told her he was fine, that he was safe. But even as he said the words, he felt a chill run down his spine. Later that night, Jude dragged him along to another off-campus gathering. Music, drinks, and laughter filled the air again, but beneath it all was a tension Emeka could not shake. At the edge of the party, two boys whispered heatedly, their faces grim. He caught fragments of words: revenge, tonight, blood must flow. His stomach turned, but he told himself it was none of his business. When they returned to campus, the air felt charged, like the silence before a storm. Shadows moved in corners, and the echo of footsteps seemed louder than usual. Emeka tried to shake off the unease, but deep down, he knew he was walking on dangerous ground. He lay on his hostel bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. Outside, laughter erupted, followed by sudden shouts. His heart raced as he sat up, listening. Somewhere in the darkness, a clash had begun, and though he was not part of it, his name, his face, his very presence among those boys had already tied him to their fate. Emeka closed his eyes and whispered a prayer, unaware that the choices he had made, the friends he had kept, had already begun to write the next tragic chapter of his life. The night was heavy with silence, the kind of silence that warns of danger before it arrives. The university campus lay under a thin veil of darkness, broken only by the dim glow of streetlights that flickered like tired eyes. Somewhere in the distance, the faint sound of shouting erupted, growing louder with every heartbeat. Emeka stirred on his bunk, his mind restless. He had tried to study that evening, but the words in his textbook danced without meaning. Something was wrong. He could feel it in the air. Suddenly, a crash shattered the silence. Windows breaking. Voices screaming. Then came the sound of running feet, dozens of them, thundering through the corridors. Emeka jumped to his feet, his heart hammering in his chest. His roommates bolted upright too, their faces pale with panic. "It has started," Jude whispered, his voice trembling. "Cult war." Before Emeka could ask questions, the door banged open and students poured in, shouting about a clash near the lecture halls. Rival cult groups had crossed paths, and the violence had spilled into the open. Machetes flashed in the night, bottles broke against skulls, and the campus became a battlefield. Fear gripped Emeka as he stumbled outside with the others. The air was thick with dust and smoke, the cries of the wounded mixing with the roar of angry chants. He tried to run, but everywhere he turned was chaos. Boys he had seen laughing only hours ago were now fighting like beasts, blood on their shirts and madness in their eyes. In the confusion, someone grabbed his arm. Emeka, run. It was one of the boys from Jude's circle, his face streaked with sweat and blood. But before Emeka could move, a group of angry students spotted him. They surged forward, their eyes blazing with suspicion. "That's one of them," someone shouted. "He's always with the cult boys." Emeka's heart stopped. He raised his hands, backing away. No. No, I'm not, please, listen to me. I'm not a cultist." His voice cracked with desperation, but the crowd was deaf to reason. They saw only guilt in his association, not innocence in his words. Hands grabbed him, rough and merciless. He was dragged to the open ground near the hostel, his knees scraping the earth. Faces surrounded him, furious and unrelenting. Some shouted for his blood, others jeered, calling him names he had never deserved. A tyre appeared, black and heavy, and someone forced it over his shoulders. Emeka struggled, tears streaming down his face. "Please, I swear, I'm not one of them. I came here to study. Ask anyone, I am not a cultist." But anger is a fire that consumes truth. His cries were drowned by the roar of the mob. Someone poured petrol, the sharp stench filling the air. The liquid soaked into his clothes, chilling his skin before turning to terror. Students held up their phones, recording, their faces twisted between rage and excitement. Emeka's voice rose again, breaking like glass. "Mama. Mama, I'm not a cultist." His words tore through the night, a cry of innocence that no one wanted to hear. He thought of his mother's hands, rough but gentle, lifting his face when he promised to make her proud. He thought of the nights he had studied by candlelight, the blisters on his palms from carrying cement, the dreams he had held so tightly. Was this how it would end? Burn not for what he did, but for who he walked beside. The fire flickered at the end of a matchstick. The crowd leaned forward, hungry for violence. Emeka closed his eyes, his tears falling fast, his lips moving in prayer. He did not pray for himself alone. He prayed for his mother, that she would somehow survive the heartbreak. He prayed that someone, anyone, would remember his truth, that he was not what they said he was. The match dropped. Flames leapt to life, devouring the ground, reaching for him. Heat seared his skin, and pain ripped through his body. His screams filled the night, mingling with the cheers of those who condemned him. "I'm not a cultist," he cried one last time, his voice breaking into the flames. Around him, the crowd began to scatter, some out of fear of the authorities, others satisfied with the cruel spectacle. But for Emeka, there was no escape. The fire consumed what he had worked for, what he had dreamed of, what he had promised his mother. In the corner, one boy, silent, trembling, recorded the scene on his phone. Later, he would play it back in private, unable to erase the image of Emeka's tears. He had known Emeka, known his quiet nature, known that he had never lifted a machete or sworn an oath to darkness. But fear had kept him silent when his voice could have been a shield. When the flames died down, the air was heavy with smoke and sorrow. The crowd dispersed, leaving only ashes and whispers. Some walked away shaking their heads, others laughed nervously, but none carried the weight that Emeka's mother would soon bear. Far away in Umeus, Mama Nkechi woke suddenly in the night, her chest tightening with dread. She clutched her Bible, tears spilling down her face without reason. Her heart told her what her ears had not yet heard: her only son was gone. The boy she had raised with prayers and sacrifice had been swallowed by a fire he did not deserve. Back on campus, the authorities would later call it a tragedy, another incident of court violence. Reports would be written, names would be whispered, but Emeka's name would carry a stain he never chose. For the students who saw him dragged that night, he would forever be remembered as one of them, though the truth lay buried with his ashes. But in the quiet places of memory, his last cry lingered. "I'm not a cultist." A cry of innocence, a cry against injustice, a cry that should have saved him but instead became his final words. As the night gave way to dawn, the first rays of sunlight touched the scorched ground. Birds sang in the distance, indifferent to the sorrow that had unfolded. Life on campus would resume, lectures would continue, laughter would return. But for those who had witnessed the flames, the image of Emeka's burning body would never fade. He was gone, his dreams reduced to smoke, but his tragedy would become a warning. A warning about the dangers of bad company, about how a single wrong association could erase a destiny. His voice, though silenced, echoed still in the hearts of those who listened closely. I'm not a cultist. The morning after the flames, the university campus wore a mask of silence. Students moved in hushed tones, their eyes heavy with the weight of what they had seen. Some pretended nothing had happened, burying themselves in lectures and assignments. Others whispered in corners, replaying the horror in fragments. Yet no one could erase the image of Emeka's final cry. His voice still lingered in the air, raw, desperate, and unanswered. Far away in Umu's, Nkechi was bent over her small farm, pulling weeds with tired fingers. She felt it again, that sudden tightness in her chest, the shiver of a sorrow that had no name. By midday, the message arrived. A neighbor's son, breathless from travel, stumbled into her compound with eyes that could not meet hers. He stammered, fumbled, and finally delivered the words that shattered her world. Her only son, her Emeka, was dead. The cry that rose from Nkechi's throat echoed across the village. Women dropped their baskets, men paused mid-conversation, and children stopped their games. She fell to the ground, clutching the soil, beating her chest as if she could wake herself from a nightmare. Chinik. My God. Bring back my son. He was not a cultist, she wailed. Her neighbors gathered, murmuring in shock. Some wept, others shook their heads. They had watched Emeka grow, seen his struggles, celebrated his admission. Now he was gone, consumed by fire not of his making. The burial was quick, the body too charred for open mourning. A small crowd followed the coffin to the village graveyard, the air thick with disbelief. The pastor spoke of destiny, of life's brevity, of the dangers that lurk in the world of youth. But Nkechi heard none of it. Her eyes were hollow, her hands trembling as she clutched her Bible. She wanted answers, but none came. In the days that followed, the story of Emeka's death spread like wildfire. Newspapers reported it in cold headlines: suspected cultist lynched on campus. They did not tell of his nights of labor, his candlelit studies, his prayers whispered in the dark. They did not write of his mother's sacrifice or his innocence. They reduced his life to a rumor, his name to a cautionary label. But among the students who had known him, guilt festered. Some remembered his quiet smile, his dedication to books, his refusal to swear allegiance to anyone. They whispered the truth to each other: he had not been one of them. Yet their whispers came too late, drowned by the noise of the crowd that had judged him guilty without trial. One evening, in the university chapel, a lecturer stood before a group of trembling students. He had taught Emeka in his first semester, seen the spark in his eyes. His voice broke as he addressed them. Do you see what has happened? A life full of promise has been cut short, not by God's will, but by human carelessness. Bad friends, bad choices, bad company, they are fires that consume. If you want to honor Emeka, stay away from them. Do not walk where his feet walked. Learn from his pain. Some students wept openly. Others bowed their heads in shame. The lecturer's words cut deep, turning Emeka's tragedy into a mirror for every young heart in that hall. Back in the village, Nkechi lived each day in the shadow of her son's absence. She sat often by his grave, speaking to the earth as if he could still hear. My son, they called you what you were not. They killed you for a crime you did not commit. But I know the truth, and God knows the truth. Her neighbors pitied her, bringing food, sitting with her in silence. Yet she never stopped mourning, never stopped repeating his final words: I'm not a cultist. In time, his story became legend in Umu's. Parents told their children of Emeka when warning them about peer pressure. Teachers spoke of him in classrooms, painting his life as both an inspiration and a warning. He worked hard, they would say, he chased his dreams. But one wrong step, one wrong crowd, ended it all. Emeka's name became a parable. To the youth, it was a reminder that one careless friendship could stain a reputation forever. To parents, it was a call to watch over their children, to pray harder, to guide them even when the world pulled them away. To the community, it was a scar, proved that sometimes the innocent suffer while the guilty walk free. Yet even in his absence, Emeka's light had not gone out completely. His story saved others. Some boys, tempted by the lure of cultism, remembered his fate and turned away. Some girls, pressured to follow reckless paths, whispered his name as a shield. In death, he had become what he had long dreamed to be in life, a lesson, a guide, a voice in the dark. The day came when the university held a memorial for students lost to cult violence. Pictures of victims lined the walls, their faces frozen in youthful promise. Among them was Emeka's photo, his eyes calm, his smile faint, his future erased. The hall was silent as a speaker recited each name, ending with his. He said, "I'm not a cultist." But nobody listened. Let us not make that mistake again. The students rose to their feet, some with tears, some with clenched fists. A vow was made that night, not to let another innocent be swallowed by silence, not to let peer pressure dictate destiny. It was too late for Emeka, but not too late for the living. Back in her small compound, Mama Nkechi lit a candle by her son's photo. The flame flickered, casting shadows on the mud walls. She whispered into the night, her voice steady despite her tears. "Sleep well, my son. Your story will not be forgotten. They took your body, but they cannot kill your truth. Your last cry will live on as a warning to the youth." And so, Emeka's life ended, but his voice echoed beyond the grave. A boy who carried cement to build his future, who studied by candlelight, who dreamed of lifting his mother out of poverty, had become more than a victim. He had become a message carved into the hearts of those who listened. One wrong friend can end a destiny. One wrong choice can erase years of sacrifice. Emeka's last cry was not just his own, it was the cry of every youth standing at the crossroads of temptation. "I'm not a cultist." His words still linger, pleading with a generation to choose wisely, to walk carefully, to value life over fleeting power. And as long as his story is told, Emeka will never truly be gone. Don't let Emeka's story be in vain. Cultism, bad friends, and peer pressure destroy destinies. Share this story to warn others, and let every youth hear his cry, "I'm not a cultist." This touched you? Like, comment your thoughts, and share with someone who needs to hear this. Subscribe for more African true stories and folktales with powerful lessons. Together, let's raise awareness and save lives.